Why is my hair always crap right before I make videos? Why do I never look in mirrors? What is happening right here? The heck? My family is finally gone and didn't leave me 2 days worth of work to do for the day that they will be gone. Well, because I got everything done already. But still, I can finally make a video that was actually specially requested by a very close person to me. What was I thinking? My top 10 medieval weapons. Because I probably don't actually talk about this very much on my YouTube channel, at least not anymore. I don't remember if I did that a lot when I was coming up. I'm a studier of medieval weapons, fighting styles, blacksmithing techniques, metallology, whatever it's called. I can't pronounce that. But yeah. My top 10 medieval weapons. By the way, this is medieval. By medieval, medieval usually refers to European, not to, it usually refers to European, not anything Asian, so I'm going to be sticking to my top 10 favorite European medieval era weapons. Katanas and kanabos are flippin' awesome, but they technically not medieval. Okay, number 10 on my list. Number 10 on my list is the Flanged Mace. And specifically the Flanged Mace, not the normal mace. Because Flanged Maces look cooler. It's pretty much it. There's very little difference in their versatility and weight and all that other stuff. The Flanged Mace, in my opinion, just looks cooler in most cases. Instead of just a ball on a stick. But, you know, ball on a stick. Number 9 is just a classic longsword. It's a flippin' sword. It's cool. I especially like the stylized. I especially like the ones with like the wide, deep fullers, which is the blood groove. It's not a blood groove. There's no suction when you stab somebody. It's not how it works. So don't give me that bull crap. I like those fullers. Or the ones with the wide blades and the wide, deep fullers. The very, I just thought, the very, Viking era styled ones. But, yeah, those are, I like swords. Swords are cool. Number 8. Number 8, I believe, was the billhook. The billhook was an actual billhook is a tool used for harvesting things off of trees. It's basically a machete with, I can put a picture up of it. It's a machete with a hook on the end of it. It looks like the blade is shaped like that. So it can reach up and trim down branches off of trees or fruit from trees and all that different kind of stuff. It was a very common thing for people to grab tools that could already be used as a weapon, reinforce them a little, and then just cleave people with them. That's why, axes were actually, they were probably the most prominent, things like polearms, which are just a thing on a stick, and axes, which made up the majority of polearms, were so popular. But billhooks would often be modified with spear points and back points, like the next thing. Oh wait, no, it's not the next thing on my list. We'll come back to this. Oh yeah, billhook. Machete on a stick. The next thing I think was the Gluten Dog, which is a much, much lesser known weapon, it was invented. I don't know if it was invented. It was primarily used in it was invented and primarily used in Germany during the uh, German-French wars, and a Guten Dog is basically just it's an extra thick quarterstaff with a spike and a metal cap on the end. It's a big thick stick with a spike on it. It's basically just a really beefy spear. But the reason that this takes the place of a spear is because of the story behind how it got its name. So it was a very commonly given out weapon to guards in Germany, and these guards were ordered to kill any Frenchmen on sight because of the French-German war. They didn't want French people coming over and doing stuff. I don't know the logistics of it, but, you know. So they would hand these out to guards, and then the guards would walk around with this big old stick on their shoulder, and walking around, and then they see somebody walking up the road, and if they don't look like they're from around here, they just say, Guten Tag, and if the person answered back in a French accent, they had the right to just kill them right then and there. And if they didn't answer, they got detained. So, yeah. So it was called the Gluten Dog after the tactic that guards used to take to kill French people. Okay, and then the next one on my list was, we're at what, number 5? Number 5? Number 6. It was called the Bullock Dagger. All of my European friends should get what this is. It is exactly what it sounds like. Bullock is a slang word, is a European slang word for the male genitalia area. It's I think almost specifically refers to the testicles. Yes, I know I'm making this weird and cringy, but I think it's funnier that way. So it was a dagger. It was a dagger that was invented and primarily used in Scotland and Ireland. It spread the Polax spread. It spread a little bit down into more European areas as the Celtic influence spread out a little bit. How did it get its name? It was a dagger, and the guard of it, the way that they would carve the guard and the handle, would look a lot like a penis. It just looked like a penis. It was like the handle would have 2 nodes on it, and then just a straight thing. And I think it was theorized that it was supposed to look like foliage, but it ended up just looking like a penis. And then it was a super common thing for people to just hand down weapons and knives and armor and clothes and all that stuff, because everything was expensive and everything is really difficult to make when you don't have modern industry. So they would hand everything down. And your great-grandfather that bought his penis knife as a joke and carried it around because he thought it was funny, handed it down to your grandfather, your dad, and then down to you, because now it's yours. And you don't have the money to buy a different knife. So now you have a knife that looks like a penis. Hopefully you have the same sense of humor as your great-grandfather. It was called the Bec de Corbin, was I believe, the traditional name for it. Most people would know it as a pole hammer or a war hammer. I think the Bec de Corbin specifically references the pole version. I'm not 100% sure, because neither are most historians. a lot of things got lost in translation with, um, the whole what's it called? The whole language changing thing. It's a little difficult to decipher the names of actual things. Excuse me, that was a burp. What was I thinking? It was a hammer. He was actually a very small hammer. Most war hammers, believe it or not, didn't make it over about a pound for the actual hammer end of it. Uh, because, for one, most of the time, when uh, during the era that a lot of these hammer type weapons were being used, you were using also a shield. So you couldn't make some. You could. I don't know if any of y'all have tried swinging a 3-pound hammer. Or like, okay, war hammers in video games. They're flipping huge. They're like the size of the body of the person. And in all honesty, if you had, I swing hammers. I swing a lot of hammers. I've swung a lot of hammers. I swung a lot of different kinds of hammers. Everything from wooden ones to metal ones. And I can tell you for a fact that a wooden mallet the size of your chest is not light. You're swinging a log on a stick. Those things I've tried. I could barely pick the thing up with 2 hands. I could barely pick the thing up and swing it with 2 hands. It was so you could imagine trying to swing something flipping huge with 1 hand, unless if you are one of those Olympic style strongmen, you probably can't swing this more than 2 times without having to take a break. And basically, big weapons are heavy and slow. The heaviest weapon that was ever used in history was about 20 to 25 pounds on average. And it was not a super common thing because it was flipping heavy. And there weren't a lot of people who were like confident enough with their strength to fight with one of those all day long. So back to carbon. Back to carbon. So it was usually about anywhere between 1 to 1.5 pounds for the full piece of it. It would be back to carbon, by the way, translates to crow's foot or crow's beak, and it would because it looked like a crow's head. It had a spike coming out the back of it, and the actual hammer part coming out the front. Usually, they would either score a line or separate the front face so that there were 4 prongs in the front, just to help catch onto armor and stuff, so it doesn't glance off. And there'd be a spike out the top of it for spear usage. So you could stick, you could smash, and you could pick all with 1 tool. And I don't know. I like the versatility. Also, the name Back Corbin. It sounds like a house in a Game of Thrones show, or in a Game of Thrones episode. House Back Corbin. I don't know. Next on my list, the Polax. The Polaxes were, and I wanted to discern this really quickly. Is sometimes when you look up Polax, it'll just bring up Polish axes. I'm talking about a Polax as in the axe on a stick. It's very similar. It's basically the same thing as a Back Corbin, but it had an axe face instead of a hammer face. And those were pretty much their only discernations. They were also a German weapon, and they were also a commonly used German weapon, and a lot of these weapons that I'm putting on this list are going to be German, but the Germans made and invented a lot of different kinds of weapons and used a lot of different kinds of weapons. They were warmongers. The next one on my list is the Halberd. Halberd is basically a poleaxe, but instead of having instead of having a oh wait, no, I'm sorry. The Polax. The Polax, instead of it did have a hammer face on it. Instead of having a hammer face, or instead of having a spike on the back, it would have an axe on the back of it instead of a spike like the Bector Corbin. Uh, okay, now to Halbert. That was my mistake, and sorry. Okay, it's like the Polax, except instead of having a hammer face on the back, it has a long hook. Usually, it wasn't a a piercing. It wasn't so much a spike like on the Bector Corbin. It was more it was more of a hook, because it was at least theorized that usually this hook wouldn't be used for stabbing into people. It would be used for you would flip the thing around and then trip people or pull weapons or pole arms out of the way for cavalry marches and all that stuff, or just generally yank somebody around, move them out of the way, break open ranks, pull away shields, that kind of stuff. It still had the spearhead. It was actually usually a little bit longer than the poleaxe. It could go from anywhere from being like this long to like 2 feet taller than the person using it, and so anywhere from being just a normally sized hand axe, to flipping the heck to flipping LeBron James as I don't know where I was going with this joke. Yeah, I don't know. I really like the versatility, and I like axes. So, also, I'm a huge fan of tripping tactics. I've practiced a little bit of fighting. It's called HEMA, Historical European Martial Arts. I've practiced it a little bit. I'm self-taught, meaning I look up videos online and I practice the things that I see online. Sometimes I don't usually have a lot of time to do that kind of stuff, but is called the Zweihander, which translates to two-hander, which mean in reference to giggity, in reference to this sword. It's a sword, by the way, is so flipping huge it is impossible for you to swing it without using two hands. This a Zweihander was usually between 10 and 12 pounds. It was, I believe, no, it was anywhere from 10 to about 16 pounds. And it's from 10 to 16 pounds. And it was the second heaviest sword to ever actually be used in war. Well, to be historically known to be used in war. Because it's flipping huge, and after a point, it just becomes impractical. The Zweihander is that one that you see. It's like a whole foot taller, a whole hand to a foot taller than the person who is holding it, and it usually has like a wavy. It has like a wavy blade. Sometimes it has a wavy blade, sometimes it doesn't. It's a little iffy, but it depends on who is making it. But a lot of people like the wavy blade because you're already making a huge sword, might as well make it as showy as possible, right? The sword was so huge and intimidating that during the 15th and 16th century Germanic wars, they would every once in a while they would have just a big guy. That big guy, they would make every once in a while they would make Zweihanders, and then they would just give one to literally the biggest looking guy, the biggest and strongest and scariest looking guy here. They would just grab one and then hand it to him. It would be given to them by the German military as a scare tactic. So there would just be this huge flippin' dude with a really big sword standing there behind a row of guys holding spears, and it would be this dude was they were both a scare tactic for cavalry and or they were both a scare tactic for foot troops, and then they were an anti-cavalry measure. So they killed flipping horses and people on top of horses, and then they also scared the pants off of just anyone else who was standing in front of them. These would be like, people were short back then. Like, people were like, my height would be considered at like the top of the average, maybe a little bit above the average. I'm 5'6", and people were not tall back then. They would be handing these to people who were like 6'2", 6'6", full of muscles, and just big old grimace on their face. And they would just give these dudes swords, and then they would just stand there looking angry, and then that was their scare tactic, and it actually flippin' worked. That's why I love this Zweihander so much. That, and it's a huge flippin' sword. Why wouldn't I love a huge flippin' sword? Which actually brings me to number 1 on my list. The Claymore, or Claymore. Claymore is Irish, Claymore is Scottish. Wait, other way around. Claymore is Scottish, Claymore is Irish. I don't know what the translation of this one actually means. It's usually the translations for a lot of weapons from the European era. A lot of the translations for weapons just translate to something super obvious, like what they would look like, or just what it is, like the Icelandic Sverd, which is it's a one-handed arming style sword. Sverd translates to sword. It translates to sword. Claymore, the Claymore, I don't actually know the translation of, though. It probably means something like big sword, or something of that accord. It was on average a lot shorter than it was on average a lot shorter than the Zweihander, but it was pretty much the same thing otherwise. It was a lot shorter, wider blade. My personal favorite version of it is the Irish version. It's the Irish version of the Claymore, where they don't usually have the secondary handle leather wrapping at the base of the blade, and the secondary guard, the secondary small guard at the top of, or at the top of that secondary handle. It's just big, wide blade, deep fuller. I love the deep fuller look. And then just a really long handle and a huge guard. And the blades were on the blades. The length of them didn't usually vary. They were usually about a meter. For Americans, that's a little less than 4 feet. Blade length, which doesn't really sound that huge until. Okay, hold on a second. Why didn't I bring this out at the beginning of the video? This would have been the perfect video to have my sword. This was the average size arming sword. It's about 3 feet. Well, no, this wasn't the average size one. This is actually a bastard sword, which is a bastard sword, by the way, is the blade is a little bit shorter than a long sword, and the handle is about 1.5 hands wide. You measure the handle by hands, not by inches or centimeters. They would be about 1.5 hands wide. A hand, by the way, is about 5 inches. It's about 4.5 inches. It differs in different places, but it's usually about 4.5 inches. So 1.5 hands would be about 7 inches, or 6 or 7 inches. So some people it's 4.5, some people it's 5. Again, it differs from place to place. But this is about the size of a bastard sword. This would be it would be a hand-me-down sword that people and Zerd style. This is a cheap though, so this is a cheap wall hanger though, so it's not the prettiest. I say cheap. It's not cheap. This was like $85. So this sword, it's about hip level. If I set it on the ground, I could use this thing. I could use this thing as a walking cane if I wanted to. Now a claymore, the blade would be at about here. The blade would end here. The sword would actually be about as, when you count in the handle, would be about as tall as I am. The blade was 4 feet. The rest of it was also flippin' huge. They would be, they would usually be between 1 and 1.5 feet long for just the handle, because this sword was the sword was designed as an anti-cavalry and anti-infantry weapon. Celts and Scots were not huge fans of wearing armor most of the time. A lot of what they would be wearing is just it would be thick padded things, and really rich guys would wear chainmail over top of their thick padded things. So what they would do, and some people just wouldn't wear armor. Like, it was a Celtic battle tactic to just not wear armor. You'd grab an axe, you'd grab a shield, you'd strip down to literally nothing, and then just run. You just run screaming at people, and it was great. and it worked. I don't know about you, but if there was an angry Irishman screaming and running at me naked holding a sword, I would be bolting for the hills. It's great. But claymore, they were actually a super commonly used weapon during the Scottish Rebellion of Great Britain. These things, they made a lot of them. They made a lot of them and handed them out to a lot of people, and then they would just run and skirmish. Irish and Scottish weren't huge tacticians. They were more about, be tough and scary. Every soldier should be able to carry his own weight. Just run out there and kill things. Most other places ran phalanx formations and actual battle tactics. These guys would just grab a really big sword or a really big axe, and then they would run, they would scream, and they would swing, and then that was it. And it actually flippin' worked sometimes. It actually flippin' worked against a lot of people, especially when during the Scottish Great Britain Rebellion. This, I guess it's just called the Scottish Rebellion, but if they would just run, they would just be lines of Scotsmen, and then a ton of them would be holding these huge flipping swords, and these swords were designed for leverage. These swords were not designed for like fancy cuts and sword fighting. These things were designed for you to aim at a horse's flipping neck and cut off its head. And aim for the horse's neck, cut off its head, wait for the person to fall off this dying horse, and then you would come by and you would just flippin' murder stroke the guy. You would just run up and slash him while he was down on the ground and pinned underneath his horse, and just if it couldn't make it through the armor, it would crush everything underneath. And they were awesome. By the way, a claymore weighs about the same amount as a Zweihander, but it's a lot shorter, so it's a lot denser. And it's this thing, it was basically a really long meat cleaver with a point on the end. They would just destroy people, and that is why it's my favorite. Not so much because of like, ooh, claymore, it sounds cool, and ooh, big sword. It's like, flippin', the history behind this is amazing. They just flippin'. That's my. You guys have seen what I do in video games. I just go flippin' berserk. I love playing the tanky melee character, because I love just running in and just heads. It's the greatest. I love it so much. It's just... What was I thinking? Yeah, my top 10. Now I got 35 minutes of video to go through. I hope you liked this. I hope you like me ranting about swords for a while. This is great. This was great. Okay, I'll see you guys later. I'm gonna be trying to get some videos out and try, now that things have slowed down a little bit for the house, and it's been like 6 months. I'm gonna be trying to post videos more regularly now. I'm probably not gonna get back up to my twice a week standard that I've been trying to do, but I'm going to be making more videos. Or at least I'm going to be trying to make more videos. School is starting up soon, so I'm going to have a lot more free time, because my brothers won't be here. My brothers won't be here, so I can just get all my crap done, and then come up here and do whatever. And then they come home, and they go in their room, and they do their homework, and I get to edit videos. It'll be great. And hopefully, I'll set up an actual recording place, instead of you guys having a dingy background of my futon that I sleep on. I moved my beanbag chair up there, and I just want to point this out really quick. It used to be an actual chair, but I am so heavy that I have squished it. I squished a beanbag chair. This is what I sit on when I'm playing video games, and I squished it. Okay, I think that should be it. I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye, YouTube.